I feel that perhaps you aren't ready for this was a message I got in the Apple classes, and then I got it again with the stupid Zoom tower and share. Anyway, there's a lot I didn't know how to do. So I really appreciate seeing a specific strategy, and everything you were talking about relates to the sort of background models of how we think about integrating technology. And this is not a product presentation. This is more of a process mindset presentation, because what happened was Emma came to my class because some students weren't able to use their iPads because the Wi-Fi was funny, even we got them on the right Wi-Fi. And I was using class time to have Emma come, which I felt okay about, but then I had to kind of work my way around how do I feel about using tech in the classroom when I'm not teaching a technology class. So in the School of Education, we do have an educational technology class, and we do have Dr. Chinwe Ekpezi, who has a degree in educational technology, but several of us have taught it, and we don't necessarily have great expertise in it, but we try really hard. But I'm not currently teaching ed tech, but I'm still working on what is the mindset we have about technology. And so this is completely made up informal data that I believe to be true. Here are the many ways I've failed. So when we started taking iPad classes, I couldn't see the control panel. Nope, couldn't. And you have to swipe down from the corner. I think I was maybe, 30% accurate. And it felt to me like that top blue line, that's where everybody else was. And I was just totally bombing. I took the Apple class, I passed it, I took each quiz, I'm gonna say 6 times. I can screen share. I'm pretty good at screen sharing. I know how now. Don't use the Apple Pen. My handwriting is really poor, and that's not gonna change. And there's no point. It won't even convert to text most of the time. So I don't, it's true. Notability, we had to do homework in the Apple class on notability, and I'm not crafty, so that was a nightmare. But I did it. And then I can share links. I didn't know what the share arrow was. That's the little box that has a little arrow going up from it. I didn't know that for a really long time, but then I got better at it. Then I was trying to share links that were inside the Google Docs, and that didn't really work either. So what I discovered is that I thought, okay, I have a pretty slow growth pattern and I need a lot of practice. And I thought, okay. So I can either just kind of walk away from the tech and be a Luddite, which was tempting. But I thought, no, I'm not going to. I'm going to figure out some strategies to engage with using tech. So when I did that, I thought about a fundamental model in educational technology, which is TPACK, which means the integration of your technological knowledge, your pedagogical knowledge, and your content knowledge. And when I thought about all 3 of those, the intersection of all 3 is when I think it's when you're able to effectively bring your content expertise, like immunology, your general biology, your pedagogy, your pedagogical knowledge about how to communicate that effectively in a range of ways, and your technology knowledge, which for me was not very well developed, all together at once. And I decided after the Apple class experience, I had to be really open to a lot of failure as I built my technological knowledge. I have strong pedagogical skills, and I'm always learning more, but I had to be deliberate about how am I teaching. And then I had to sustain my content knowledge in inclusive education. So going back to TPACK really helped me think, okay, I have some skills, they're just not technological yet. So I'm going to build my technological knowledge, and I'm going to explore a ton of failure, which I did. So one of the key things we talk about in education is to have an attitude of curiosity about learning instead of frustration. And a constructivist ideology, which I'll talk about on the next page, includes Vygotsky's zone of proximal development, where you're having new learning take place, where I'm not bored because it's too easy, I'm not frustrated because it's too hard, but it's right where I can learn new things. And I had sailed right past that zone into frustration with that Apple class. So the Apple class pushed me into being, I don't understand it, I can't do it, I don't see how it's relevant, but there are a lot of ways it could be. So I'm going to get myself back into my zone of proximal development, and I'm going to think like a constructivist, and I'm going to remember that there's lots of things I can do. So what I decided is that I wanted to be explicit in my classes about the fact that I was building my technological skills, because in the School of Education, where we're preparing teachers, we need to be able to talk about teaching deliberately. I see there's a comment. So I decided to focus on a couple areas, building my technological knowledge of how to use the iPad, then figuring out how to integrate it with Zoom and the computer tower and going back and forth. And then more recently, how to use Classroom. Oh. So then what happened was I made a ton of mistakes and I failed a lot. And then I had some success. And I came to this decision about 10%. So what happened was I thought, okay, I know that I want to build my technological knowledge. I know that I'm in pedagogy, so modeling, teaching, and learning new things is actually relevant to all my course outcomes. I will give, in an 80-minute class, 10% of my minutes to technology. And that's 8 minutes. That's a lot of minutes. I don't feel like I have 8 minutes to spend on technology, but let's just be deliberate about it. So what happened in the spring of 2021, and I don't know if this is true for anyone else, but I was face-to-face, and I would get to class, and I'd be early, but we'd be following all the COVID protocols. I would have students face-to-face, I would have students on Zoom. I had an iPad, and I would have to open Blackboard, open Google Drive, open the iPad, get the Zoom started, get my Zoom waiters into the room. And it was taking me 5 or 6 minutes, and I was feeling really stressed out about it because I would feel behind at the start of every class, and it didn't seem like that was optional. Because even when I got there early, I still had to let the Zoomers in at the right time. So I had my roomers and my Zoomers, and then I'm trying to figure them out. The students who are going to be collaborating in breakout rooms with the Zoomers, they had to get their iPads ready and turn off their audio. Love of God. Yeah. So it was always taking some time, and making a decision to spend 10% of my class time on technology was an enormous relief, because then I wasn't feeling like I'm behind already. What am I doing wrong? Nothing. It's just tech is going to take a while. So that was super helpful. And maybe for anyone who's listening, that might be helpful to you too, to consider it's okay that tech takes some time if we're being deliberate about it. Then Susan Schultz, who's a genius, has every semester a technology goal. And I don't know when she started doing it, but it's wildly impressive. And I thought, okay, I'm going to do that too. Because part of staying in my zone of proximal development was I felt a little bit like I was drinking from a fire hose. Like Rabiel just talked about MindMeister, and then the other one I don't even remember. I don't even know where to find them to look at. So there's so much information available to me in the sea of technology that refining myself down to something manageable made sort of sipping from the technology ocean possible. So Sue, in a really deliberate way, always has a technology goal, and I started doing the same thing. So in the spring of 2021, my 2 goals were to use the iPad to join Zoom breakout rooms, which is harder than you think, because you got to turn off your audio, you got to go in the room, you got to be in the room, you got to get out of the room, you have to turn the audio back on. Missed that memo a lot of times. So I had a lot of successes, some successes, not a lot. And then I wanted to use the iPad to show slides, probably PowerPoint, sometimes Google Slides, and I wanted to draw on them on the iPad while I lectured. Yeah, big fat fail. I don't know how, I didn't do it right, I didn't share them right. I'm moving on from that goal, I don't care anymore. I might go back to it later, but that just was not successful. But narrowing it down really helped. Then this past fall, I wanted to learn how to use the Classroom app. So I had the Apple II class, I'm gonna learn about Classroom. I have ideological concerns about the oversight of the student's device, but okay, fine, I'm going to try it. And I did have some successes. I was able to turn it on, sometimes turn it off, sometimes I didn't, left that class on all day. Sometimes I would get feedback from them into the Classroom app, but I didn't know it and I didn't know how to get it. And then I got better at that. I know Kristen does that. And there's a little tiny Dropbox in the Classroom app, and then they can give you feedback. But it's not permanent unless you save it anyway. Some success, some failure. Then I wanted to use Google Drive, documents, Jamboards, and slides with the iPads that I had. So I had a learning community. Here's what they did. Yes, that is my learning community. And I was so sassy. I thought, okay, we have a shared folder for every class. And in the shared folder, we're going to do this activity, and we are still kind of in the zone of I'm not going to put chart paper up and have them put their Post-it notes. We're going to do the Jamboard, and it's going beautifully. And we're talking about ways that they have engaged in service in high school. And they got these little nice notes up, and I let it go on too long, and then they found the markers. So my 18-year-old first-year college students logged They're tiny little minds. There's there's an upside down breast cancer awareness walk on top. There's Toys for Tots. They're coloring around the Post-it notes, and here's what happened next. It got worse. And I said, and meanwhile, I'm like, well, okay, these humans have not been in a classroom together for 2 years. I'm gonna let it ride for a little bit. Plus, I couldn't figure out how to stop them. I'm not kidding, I had no idea. Then it just went way, I don't even know, that's somebody's dog.
Okay, yes, 3 pictures.
You know what, there's videos embedded, there's a dancing tuna somewhere. I just thought, and I finally said to them, do you need to just color for a couple minutes? They're like, I'm like, yeah. We're not doing the activity anymore. They're like, no. So this is what happened when I gave them all access to a Jamboard and shared screen. Okay, that's what happened. So there were some successes, but I'm still dealing with my 10%. My next success with photo evidence, yeah, that's what happened. Oh, they had such a good time though. They really, really did. So in the spring, I'm still being deliberate with my pedagogical knowledge, and I've got this 80-minute goal. And so this spring, what I'm trying is to share links with students with the Sharo, which is working really well. I will also duplicate the link on Blackboard just for redundancy, because not every student brings the iPad, or it's not charged, or even after Emma came and checked everybody's internet, what was happening, there's still always 1 or 2 where it just doesn't work quite right. I've learned that if I push it to the class, then I can push it to an individual, and sometimes that helps. So I've had some success. I'm also alternating the computer tower and the iPad display way better than I used to. I can go back and forth now, which feels really good, because if I'm going to go back to Blackboard, that's helpful. I'm also deciding if I'm going to use Classroom for monitoring, if at all, and that's kind of in progress, because I really like getting to see, for my own information, how often are they on various apps? Who's playing Temple Run right now? Who? What pictures are they looking at? And I don't really want to do anything with it except understand, where am I giving them enough downtime that they're actually checking their bracket or whatever. I just want to know that. I'm not sure I hate it. I don't really want to control it. For me, it's going to be informational. Then I also want to get better at using Notability, because I think there's going to be ways that I would like to get my slides in Notability and draw on them, but I still don't really know how. So it started a year ago, but I haven't dealt with it this semester. Okay, so what I do before class is I decide how I'm going to use the iPad, if at all. And sometimes I do, and sometimes I don't. Am I going to use it? Do I want them to have it? Am I going to be sharing the screen? If I am going to use it 10 minutes before class, I have it ready and I open Classroom, otherwise I forget. I open Blackboard to the Google Drive, I open Blackboard to Google Drive and websites on the iPad, and I get all my links in Blackboard. Then once I'm in class, I open the computer, the Blackboard, the links, and the iPad, and that actually, I'm in a classroom where I can do all that before class begins, which is kind of nice. So I get my agenda up and I do all that. Then I'm able to go back and forth, and kind of the 8 minutes is less 8 at the beginning of class, and it's more like, I know it's going to take a minute to push a link to everyone. I know it's going to take a minute to double check that everyone has it. I know it's going to take a minute to go back and forth, to go back to Blackboard to say, here's where the link is if you couldn't get it on your tablet or you don't have your tablet. Then during class, I have, I didn't think about it a lot, but I never share their screen without asking, which I feel pretty strongly about. And one of the reasons I do is because I had a student put in a survey that I'll show you in a minute. I wish professors would be able to not share their screen without us accepting it. Dr. Arndt always asks us, but I've had professors who haven't, and she's been on her SonaSend recording app. She has an accommodation, so she's recording, and she wants that to be private. Yeah. So the idea that I'm asking permission feels reasonable to me, because just like Camille was saying, you know, they do a group thing, and then all of a sudden they don't want it in front of everybody. And this pandemic class, how I think of them, who hasn't been together for so long, especially the first years, they're shy in front of a group, it seems like. So I always ask them if I can share. Then when class ends, I have to remember to end the Classroom app, which I often don't. And at 7 o'clock at night, I'm like, I might want to end that. If I've done an exit ticket, I review it, and then I follow up on any problems. And having that 10% rule really is making a difference in how I think about class. And it won't work for every faculty member. I'm in pedagogy, so I'm modeling that I'm learning and trying and being explicit with students about that's what I'm doing with my class time. I'm showing you how I'm learning. But something that happens every semester is after about 2 weeks, I email Emma and say, okay, so here's who they are. Here's what I know. Here are the 3 that have a specific problem. Will you come now? And you spend not more than 15 minutes in each class over the course of the semester to just say, we're gonna do tech, and then I always have another task ready for them. Now what I wanna show you is what students had to say. I have 40 first-year students Tuesday, Thursday, and they did this yesterday. And I asked them how the iPads help their class experience, how their professors use the iPads, and what they wish professors could do with the iPads. And here's what they had to say. So in summary, the 37 of them that answered says, a lot of them are using it for screen enlargement. So they can see it up closer. They can use the Apple Pencil and take notes. They experience class much better. Assignments and materials are consolidated. There's not 100 pieces of paper floating around. Dr. Arndt can just share the screen with the class. She can write on PowerPoints, take notes, helps me see things. So a lot of them, I didn't think about this really, but it's right there in front of them. So the proximity of the material matters. Sharing it, we get it immediately. It helps a lot, makes my experience more inclusive. Then I was kind of intrigued by what they had to say about us. Next question. And some professors aren't using it much at all, which is fine. How do your professors use the iPad? They're sharing in classroom, they're using screen sharing, they use computers, and most professors are using it to send material out to class. And that seems to be how I'm using it. And I think when we first got the iPads, I felt a little bit like I needed to be like, everyone needed to be like Romeo, or I needed to be able to understand what apps do I want to look at, pick 1 or 2 and try them. And I'm so far from that. Like, I'm just not there yet. I'm just barely functional with what you've given me so far. So it's kind of nice to know that it's a procedural thing as opposed to a content thing. So it's being used to push documents. Screen sharing sometimes during class. Teacher can airdrop me right back on track, which I thought was smart, and which I do fairly often. Note taking, they don't use it much because of my major. Don't say what their major is. I'm intrigued. Notes or push out information, airdropping. I don't see many professors using their iPads. So I thought, okay, well, at least I'm trying it. My other professors don't use it as much. And then finally, I asked what they wanted their professors to know how to do. I just wanted to see what they say. Screen share, not screen share without us accepting it. That's the comment that I read. Doesn't cross my mind because they don't use them. I'm a novice when it comes to the iPad, and they kind of want some more direct instruction. So that's all I have. I hope that's a reasonable summary, but that's kind of what I wanted to tell you. That's gone on for a while. So I'll stop there.
Look at the little environmental person on the 3rd comment.
Yeah,
That's great. That's great.
Sadly, remember.
right. You gotta love that.
So I was gonna say that part of the reason I was hoping you would come and present today is because, like you said, what?
We'll just leave.
Oh, we got that, yeah. Well, just basically all of what you modeled here and you talked us through, and kind of the place that you're at is that you're giving yourself room to grow, right?
So much room to grow.
And you're not only giving yourself room to grow, you're giving your students room to grow. And, you know, whether that's with the iPads or with coming to college for the first time, those are things that obviously extend beyond just the technology. And so for me, when I came into the class and you said to them, not only how are things going with the iPad, do you have any questions, because Emma's here and she can try and answer them, like saying that, you know, not just in this class, but any other classes, taking the time to ask them that, but you also took the time to say, what's something that everyone's looking forward to? And so that sense of not only building the community, but building this sense of like, let's work on this together. I'm transparent with you. I'm going to show you that I struggle with this and I know you might too. And that's okay because we're going to work through it together. So that to me, just like I said, it transcends the technology, but I think it's so critical to our entire rollout of iPads is having this mentality. So I really appreciated seeing the presentation.
Well, it was hard fought because I was frustrated for a while.
Yeah.
The mindset in ed tech, so the International Society for Technology Education fundamentally wants people to leave technology classes, not with specific skills, but with a specific attitude about essentially failing forward. Just it's fine to fail and to be curious instead of frustrated. And that's tricky when there's so much to learn.
Yep.
I will not be exploring MindMeister or mind math. I don't have the bandwidth, but I will someday,
Right.
not right now.